Here on the Colour of Country Life Flow FM, good to catch up with the Shadow Minister for Transport Infrastructure, Matthew Bark. How are you, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm going really well, and it's great to have some time to be up here in Mildura, God's own country.
Yes, certainly is, and you've been supporting the local Liberal candidate, Paul Matheson, as well, and you've made, as an opposition, this big pledge for a hospital investment in Mildura. Just outline for us the reason for making that pledge.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, I wanted to learn more about exactly the nature of the health crisis here in Mildura. So Paul Matheson is our local Liberal candidate. He's a local copper. He's a great guy. He's been pushing us as a party for a long time, quite frankly, to make a very significant commitment in health infrastructure, a new hospital here in Mildura. And in all the meetings and discussions that I've had at local council, out at the airport, with business groups over the last couple of days, health has been the key theme. At the airport yesterday, senior staff told us that there's a medical flight out of Mildura every single hour, 24 a day, one an hour, and far more than pre-COVID. There are big problems, obviously, in terms of retaining staff. The current hospital's crumbling. So the Liberal pledge, the Liberal commitment is that if we're successful at November state election, we'll commit $750 million to build a new tertiary hospital. The fact that it's a tertiary hospital is really important because, again, I've heard so often in my discussions that even though Mildura is booming, and that's a great thing, and more people are coming to the city, oftentimes health staff do leave. Can be difficult to attract the very best health staff, so you've got to have opportunities through a teaching hospital to do that. So that's our pledge, and I think that's the key dividing line at the election. If people in Mildura really want a seat on a train from Cheltenham to Box Hill in Melbourne's inner suburbs in 13 years, well, that's the Labor Party's promise, and Ali Cupper, obviously, is a former member of that party. Or if you want a very significant investment in your health system and a new hospital, that's what the Liberals will deliver.
Now, when Ali Cupper, you mentioned there, asks questions in Parliament, anything touching on health, the government's quick to mention the past arrangements regarding private management of the hospital in Mildura. With this pledge, I guess the coalition's looking to draw a line under that and make a strong commitment for public health in the Mildura district.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And again, Paul's been clear on the need for that, our Liberal candidate, for a long period of time. So many others have underscored that for me. And we've made commitments now, of course, here in Mildura, very importantly, over in Wodonga, down in Warragul. Matt Guy, the opposition leader, is actually in Shepparton right now, and he's about to make another major announcement about health just at 9:30, so I probably shouldn't give the game away too.
I do know a little bit about that one, Dr. Buck, so we'll mention that in a news service. But on the rail front, before we talk about MurrayBasinRail, regularly discussed, it looks like the coalition is basically saying, look, there's been a whole lot pledged by the Andrews government for a Suburban Rail Loop, massive cost overruns according to the independent audit office there. You're basically taking elements of that and pledging that that's going to be sent in regional areas?
Definitely. I've thought for a long period of time, quite frankly, that the Andrews Labor government's so-called Suburban Rail Loop just doesn't stack up. They've never submitted the business case to be properly analysed by Infrastructure Australia. And now we learn from the Budget Office, like you say, the independent, apolitical Parliamentary Budget Office, that it's not going to cost the $50 billion that was promised. And that's a massive sum anyway. It's actually going to cost more than $200 billion. Now, if that goes ahead, there's never going to be another cent for the regions. So what Matt Guy has said and what I've said as the Shadow Minister for Transport Infrastructure is we've got to shelve that mega project in central Melbourne. We've committed to 25%, which is a huge increase of infrastructure funding for our regions. Better freight, I know in this region is really important. We're in the food bowl of the whole nation. Better freight and also better roads is a key priority. Better health services. That's why it's so important to shelve that mega project that, quite frankly, doesn't stack up.
Yeah, that $50 billion to potentially $200 billion price tag makes the price tag on MurrayBasinRail seem insignificant and just a no-brainer by comparison, given, for instance, the impact that additional freight with some bumper harvest years is having on the roads.
Yep, I think that's right. And I mean, it's funny. I drove up yesterday morning for a range of reasons. I had been told, actually, when a few people knew I was coming, that, well, politicians always fly in, so they don't quite understand just how shit-house the roads are around here. So it was really good to drive in, and I'll be driving back a little later today. The road's a nightmare. Obviously, there are so many trucks on the road. We've got to find better ways of moving freight, moving produce around. I agree with your description. I think it's a good description. It should be a no-brainer. The Andrews Labor government committed to this project, MurrayBasinRail, 8 long years ago. There's still no funding. They're still haggling about the route and a range of other things. They've got to come on board and commit before the election to actually build that. It's a really important project. I agree with you. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, you've been up there yourself on the road, and the Sunraysia Highway is one seeing some federal and state spending to fix up some dangerous intersections. In the end, as much as we put freight on the rails, there's still going to be local community members needing to drive on the roads. What's the opposition pledging in terms of road investment in the Mildura electorate?
Yeah, so I think, importantly, we'll be looking to fund significant road upgrades through that proportion of infrastructure funding that'll be coming to the regions. It's good to see some focus from other levels of government, of course, and it's really important to get more trucks off the roads. Well, for commuters, for safety, of course. I think probably first and foremost to make sure that we can quickly and effectively get produce down to ports. So, yep, I agree. Road infrastructure is really critical too.
Just lastly, some listeners might be wondering, with that discussion of $50 billion or $200 billion for Suburban Rail Loop, I know it's more so probably a question for, say, David Davis, the Shadow Treasurer, but what would the opposition do in terms of just the amount of red that the Andrews government has racked up during its time in office? Would you be looking to do the same, or you'd bring the budget closer to the black?
Well, by shelving that project, at least we have a chance of budget repair. Now, we're doing that first and foremost to fix the health crisis. And I've heard harrowing stories here in Mildura of shocking health outcomes, specifically because of the crumbling hospital here. Wonderful staff, wonderful hospital staff, but nonetheless the infrastructure lets them down. So first and foremost, we're shelving that promised mega project in inner Melbourne that doesn't stack up, so that we can fix the health crisis. But you're right, given the price tag is so astronomical, $200 billion, well, that could build more than 200 hospitals. It'll give us a chance to seek to start to put downward pressure on our debt. You know, we've got $167 billion of debt. Well, that's just a big number, I suppose, to some of your listeners. For context, that's more than New South Wales, Queensland, and also Tasmania combined. Our debt is already out of control. Sticking another $200 billion on the credit card as interest rates rise is, quite frankly, a mad proposition.
Absolutely, sounds like that to me. Dr. Matthew Bark, thanks for joining us during your visit to the Mildura electorate and supporting Paul Matheson, the Liberal candidate, and we look forward to talking to you again on Flow.
Fantastic, great to be with you, really appreciate it.